Welcome back, everybody. This is our second live stream to date. I'm looking forward to seeing more of you join. My name is Michael Gibson. I'm the creator of Norm Therapy, and I'm also the owner of Norm Therapy Incorporated. We have a lot to cover today, but I want to first talk about our disclaimers. There's a few things I must say for the record, and one of them is that we're not traditional therapists. We are norm therapists. I've been developing this concept for the past 3 decades, and now it's ready, at least for the past 5.5 years, to be launched out to the world. We have victims and survivors of abuse all over the world that we care for, that we provide norm therapy sessions, and we are looking forward to growing our following doing these live casts. So do yourself a favor, put us on your calendar, and make sure that you absolutely tell your friends and families and coworkers about us so we can get a following going and get some good information out to the public. Again, norm therapy is a revolutionary interviewing technique that's been developed in order to help victims of abuse in just about every language, continent, as well as educational level. Most often, women are the ones who report abuse. Men don't, but just as many men out there are being abused as women. They just don't report as much as others. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as we grow our following. Now, we're not, as I said before, traditional therapists, the psychotherapists and the psychiatrists, even in counselors. What we do is we actually teach people how to fish. So we take a topic like this right now and we talk about it. But these are some of the conversations that I have and our other norm therapists that we've trained have during their sessions with victims and survivors around the world. So to get us started, for the couple of you who are here so far, and people normally trickle in throughout this hour, but if you two can just put in the chat where you're from, where you're calling in from, and then I'll have something to interact with here during this instead of just hearing a talking head go for the next hour. I think that could be, I think that'd be very beneficial to us if we did that, one. And two, I think that as we move along, if our conversation relates to your own life or the lives of someone around you, feel free to write into our chat area and talk to us and let us know what's going on. And we will definitely give you some of our better answers. Everybody wants to know, and I may end up being redundant a few times for the fewer or more people that starts to come into these sessions. And so they can get the benefit of the conversation prior. I hope you don't mind. We'll do that in the beginning as we grow our following. As we move along in the future, and I think we'll do well here shortly, we're not going to do that as much. So you want to get here on time. And tell your friends and family and others to do the same. But love is something that we really need to understand a little bit about if we're going to be humans on this planet. Our biggest problem in life is not knowing where we fit in most of the time. And then once we do find out that we actually fit in, we have lost that opportunity that may have passed us by. So let's talk about love and what it means. But first, before we get into the subject, I want to ask you a question. Who here can tell me who ever found themselves in a relationship and that it was so toxic, but they loved that person so much that it ended up hurting them? Please let me know in the comments area. Have you ever found yourself in that kind of relationship? Because believe me, I think we've all been there at some point or several times in our lives. And there's a reason behind that. When you're trying to figure out the people who will be in your proximity, especially as it relates to love, when you try to decide who they're going to be, what criteria do you use in order to decide who's going to be around you or not, and especially with whom you're going to fall in love? At Norm Therapy, we have an understanding about love. What I teach and what our instructors now teach is You have to separate love from your relationship, completely sever it. Love by nature is not transactional. And a relationship by nature and by fact is. It's very transactional, and it's to the point where it's so transactional that you end up hating each other in a relationship. You end up loving each other to death in a relationship. You end up caring about each other crazily in a relationship. You end up negotiating everything in a relationship. But you keep mixing love into the relationship, and it really has nothing to do with that. Love is without compromise. It's pure and it's authentic. As a matter of fact, love is a form of humiliation, of defeatism. When you fall in love, what do? You fall in love. When you surrender to love, what do? You surrender to it. When you're overtaken by love, no one's ever been on the other side of that to say that love took me. No, you took it. And that's where we confuse ourselves in our relationships. We go into our relationships thinking that love is something we need to start with when not at all that's true. What's actually true is the relationship part first. It is estimated that the first 6 months that you spend in any relationship with anyone, be it at work, at home, school, it doesn't matter, your love life. It is estimated that only 6 months will you have to spend with that person before you see the real them come out. When you spend 6 months with that person, you'll find that the facades and the transient behavior and the temporary niceness, impressive nature, and the other things that people do in order to make you like them will start to shed away. And after that 6 months, you'll see the real them. You'll actually walk into a room and know they perhaps turned a television set when you wouldn't have cared before because you wanted to accommodate and appease them. But after those facades, that fake thing wears off, then the real them becomes a part of the narrative for your future. So what do people do during that first 6 months when they don't understand what I just said? They give their all to that person. They share the most intimate thoughts and understandings. They fall madly in love with this person, hopefully, or hopefully not. And they do all of these types of things to nurture that relationship alone. When all they should have done prior is just to have existed and coexisted and understood the relationship part of being with that person instead of the loving part. Because in order to have love, you must first have honor, respect, integrity, fidelity, trust, understanding, commonality, humor, just humor, plain old humor. And above all, you must be able to communicate. This is what you form during the relationship, and it should have absolutely nothing to do with love. Love is the exaltation of the defeated self. It's you laying down yourself to that emotion and succumbing to it. It's a form of defeatism. So when you end up in a relationship, oftentimes with people who you probably shouldn't be with, or they don't really deserve you, is because you bypass them respecting you ever, or trusting you, or understanding you, or participating in your life, or appreciating the things you do for a hobby, or what you do as a vocation or a job. They don't like the fact that you went to Harvard and they went to Exeter, or not Exeter, or they went to Stanford. They don't like the fact that you pick your teeth after you eat. You didn't go through that phase to figure out why you're with this person. And I'm seeing some background colors in here as well, and I may have to change my thing because this green screen thing is not working. Can everybody see me okay in the chat? Just tell me if I'm okay, and I'll. Okay, if I'm good, I'm good. That's all that matters. Yeah, we'll work on that later. Thanks a lot. Uh, our whole understanding of everything has to do with where do you put love when you're trying to get to know someone? And if love is non-negotiable, if love is that thing that you do not compromise and you do not make transactional, then where do you put it? Most of you have spent most of your lives, if you've fallen in love one or two or three times in life, you spent most of your lives trying to figure out the fairy tale version of what you like, want, or need out of a relationship. And normally that entails having Prince Charming or Princess Anne, having a person who champions you and respects you, a person who understands you from a visceral point of view. You have this idea of being whisked off into the hereafter and the uh, happily ever afters, when none of that has ever been true, not one day. What's been true for what love is when people can separate love from their relationship and maintain a clean and clear, pure level of love throughout their relationship. People have been married who don't get along, who argue every single day of their lives, and they've been married for 50, 60 years because their love has been separated from their actual relationship. So let's talk. Are you being held hostage? I think that's one of the most credible questions to ask anyone. I think that when you ask the question, you have to look for a real answer. Some of you are in relationships. Well, we find it norm therapy all the time. Women and some men have been abused. And they've been abused by their partner because of love, because they're held hostage by love. And what we try to teach them is to separate the two. My advice always has to do when I'm talking to someone trying to give them a relationship advice is when they say, I'm ready to leave Bob, he's the worst human being on the planet. My advice is always something to do with, have we tried everything yet? Have we really looked at every single solution out there? And if we haven't, let's try to uncover those stones. So I like the fact that love is such an enigma. It's so confusing to so many people. But when you're caught up in it, it's hard to define yourself or them. Can someone in the chat please explain to me what they think love is? Just take a short statement. Is it eternal? Is it everlasting? Is it the best thing ever? Is it definable? What is love? But since we only have so few people in the chat by now, then chances are that most of you already know what that answer is. So you can go ahead and put it in the chat if you like. If not, I'll tell you what it is. Love is something that you cannot escape in this lifetime. Whether you like it or not, you will not escape it. It will capture you because someone will love you, you will love someone, or someone would have loved to be around you or know you. Love is a part of our everyday activity and what we do in life as our bridge to other people. The community we love, the workplace we love, the art that we render that we love, the kind of car that we love. Love is an inescapable part of our lives, but we have to know where to put it. Sometimes people will rebuild a car and rebuild it to such a level that it's perfect and mint condition, and then they don't drive it. Same with a relationship. Sometimes people build up love and they build up a sense of appreciation for that love. Yet they don't participate with that love as they should. And why? Because no one's ever really taught them to do that or been that model for them to do it. So when we talk today about what is love and how does it fit in the scheme of you being probably hurt by someone who loves you. And most often, people who love you will do you more harm than people who don't. One, because they have an opportunity. We'll talk more about proximity predators in the future. But what a person who loves you and you love them have that advantage over you is plain and simple. It's because you're compelled to be there. You can't get away from your teacher. You go there every day. You can't get away from your mom and dad. They're with you. Your siblings are there. Your coworkers are there. You can't get rid of them. You can't keep them all either sometimes. But more importantly, when you love them and you have that relationship, or we have some level of connection that goes beyond that of the norm, it's very, very difficult to stop them from hurting you. And only because they're human. Because if they're a narcissist and you're your mom, you'll never escape her. If they are a bully and they're your dad, you'll never escape them. If you go to school and there's a bully that pulls you by the collar, you can't escape that and you can't work on that, but it'll be hard because this is another environment where you find people that you care about, and oftentimes for the rest of your life. So our suggestion, of course, at Norm Therapy is to always give people an option of how to love and a pathway to it. And as I stated before, practice one thing first. Practice getting to know someone. Find out all of those things you should have known prior to having been with that person, or prior to having fallen in love or fallen in like it even. Sometimes people will tell you exactly who they are to your face, and you won't hear them because you have your eyes on that Prince Charming or that Princess Anne. And you're going to make the mistake of proceeding with them in that relationship and continuing on a path of love. And you're going to put yourself in very vulnerable straits only because that's human. It's human to be vulnerable to love. Most people try to shield it and guard it. I've seen some of the toughest guys in the world, 6'2", 300 pounds of pure muscle in the military, you name it. And his wife is probably 5'4". I'm talking inches for those of you using the metric system. But his wife is probably 5'4", 5'5", little bitty thing, but yet she commands and rules because he's so fallen head and over heels for her and has so much respect for her. He gives her the authority to do that. And I'll tell you something about love, and I'll tell you something about that authority. Every relationship that you ever have in life, as it pertains to love, like, or any other emotion, every relationship you ever have in life will always 100% be an exchange of power. That's all it is. Whether it's the grocery store, when I'm negotiating food with the cashier, whether it's with my children, or whether it's with my doctor, or it's with my lawyer, or cohorts, no matter with whom, every single relationship you ever have will be an exchange of power. And it's up to you how much of your power you give away, and it's up to them how much power they give you, and vice versa. There will never be a relationship ever that's consistently 50-50. It'll run you crazy if you try for it. What will actually happen is it'll make it more difficult for you to see your way through if you don't look for a compromise most often, where you don't come out on top, and or sometimes where you do. So you have to weigh that over time. We'll talk more about relationships in the future. But right now, I want to ask a couple of questions. Who's in a relationship right now that's probably less than 50% where they have the power? Who has less than 50% of the power? Please put it in the chat. Power is Power is very transitory. Normally, power goes with the title of the person. I'm the dad, so I'm in charge of the household. I run things and I bring home the bacon. And mom, my power is I nurture the family and I educate them. Plus, I have a job and where a career where I'm busy all the time. Power is very transitory. It's not something that you can grasp or hang on to from relationship to relationship or from place to place, unless people equate power with money. Just like love, you have to discern these things in a certain way. Money is not power. Money is a metaphor for access to whatever you want, pretty much, but it's not power. There are a couple of billionaires out there got married today, and they married a person who is very undeserving of them, or they're undeserving of them. Either way, or can't get a girlfriend. So money couldn't be power. However, money can translate to power if it's used properly. What is real power, and I say this all the time to people, what's true power is if you open your mouth and you say something and that thing occurs. That's real power. So let's bring power dynamic back to love. In exchanging your negotiations and your likes and dislikes and your powers while you're in the relationship, that is what's going to develop your love for you. People normally do it backwards. They fall in love first, and then later they become less fortunate because they now get to learn that their person is no longer as reputable as they once thought he was or she. Then they get to look at it and say, this person is not someone who sleeps well with me. Maybe they're incompatible in that regard. And maybe the lure of lust has worn off, and maybe the sex life is not that good or great. A lot of things happen when you put love before the relationship. So instead of finding yourself hostage in any kind of relationship, what you must do is look at yourself and an opportunity to get to know that person, make sure that person meets all of your prerequisites. And we're going to talk about that here in a couple of seconds. And make, if not all, at least most of them. Most women I've seen in the world, and I've been everywhere, they judge men by certain standards. And they want men to be of certain caliber and degree and provide this and that. But quite often, women are not looking at themselves to see what they bring to the table. And they think that money and a job or a career is what a man is looking for, and it's not. So when you're incongruent like that, men are normally looking for a good woman, of good nature, honest, committed, smart. Men normally want a woman who is, my mom used to say when we were growing up, every man wants a lady in the streets and a whore in the sheets. Well, something like that. Not all men look for that, but it's in that ballpark. Men want very basic things. They want to make sure that if they can't cook, you can. And if they can cook, they can help. They want that kind of relationship very often. So what we'll do is we'll talk about that more and more as we move along. And because I don't have a norm therapy patient sitting right here with me with that feedback, and we're not getting a lot of feedback from the chat at this point, I can't really. Okay, I'm gonna go back to that. We can't really engage that right now, but I will if you like. I want to go back to power. Somebody mentioned that here. But when my mom was telling me about what a woman should be and what she shouldn't be and all of that when I was growing up, I didn't really listen carefully. I mean, I only learned that what she was telling me to be useful when I became a man somewhere in my early 20s. And I had really squandered many opportunities with girlfriends before that to make a good impression and do the right things. Plus, I wasn't looking for marriage. I was in the military at that time. But when you're choosing your mate, and most often people find themselves in a place where they're basing their mate on somebody they already know. Very often, if not almost all the time, when we're dating brunettes over blondes, or tall women over short, or loud women over quiet, we're doing that because someone else in our life taught us that, not through simply osmosis, but through heredity. People inherit the traits and the idiosyncrasies as well as the reasoning skills that people who raised them actually possess. Most, if your mom and dad were in a terrible relationship, chances are you're going to be in a terrible relationship and it's not your fault. What is your fault is when you recognize it to be a terrible relationship, that you extricate yourself or remove yourself from that relationship. It's your fault when you stay. But that's okay to have fault. Most people think having fault makes you guilty, and then after you're guilty, you're condemned. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. What's actually true is when you're in a relationship and you find that you're incompatible, you get to do something about it. By accepting that fault and that responsibility gives you the drive, the impetus, it gives you all kinds of strength to move out of that circumstance. If you're in a relationship where love is holding you hostage, you have choices to make. But the very first choice you should always make the choice to stay. And I know you don't, and, and I'm trying to see these messages and I'm not seeing them. Okay. And I'll come back to those in one second, but I want to say this. Um, the very first choice you make when you're trying to leave a relationship is you try to stay. The first thing you do is you try to use every measure known to man or woman to stay in that relationship and make it work. You try to do all you can to make sure that that person with whom you're involved gets the benefit of your doubt and your surety. You want that person to understand that you get them to some extent, and you're going to keep trying to get them until you have exhausted every measure to stay. And at that point, you can leave. Once you've done all you can do, you can leave. It's when you don't complete and you don't try to stay that you'll always keep going back and forth into that relationship. But the moment you found your way to the rear of that relationship and you've done all you could forward, you now have a choice to make. And it's easier to make because you can look back through your brain housing group and your memory and you can say to yourself comfortably, I did all I could. And you really did because you've exhausted those measures to stay. It's when you leave because they did X or Y or Z, and then they come back and say, I'm sorry, I wish you would take me back, and all of that. Then you go right back into that doldrum of hell. So if you're in the wrong place with the wrong person, you want to find strength. The first thing you do is try to stay. I know it sounds kind of difficult and even sometimes dangerous, but to the best of your ability, try to make it through to the next level. And if that is unattainable, you walk away. Now you have the strength mustered because you know here in your brain housing group that you have made a decision and you're going to actually follow it. Now I want to go back to the chat. I'm trying to scroll up. Any other questions? Go ahead, put them in here now that I'm missing. What question am I missing? Yeah, I'm looking right at it. The chat overlay here. I'm bringing this in. I want to answer some of your questions that are here. Okay. Okay, Sydney, I'm trying to look for your question. It's not, it didn't show up on my end. I do apologize. Maybe from that platform, it doesn't show up here. Can you just repeat the question to me here in my chat, Kelly? Yeah, because I'm not seeing, mine is, my chat here has been static. So I mean, you all may have addressed me, but for some reason, this program we're in is not advancing the chat. Okay, is that it? Okay. Okay, I'm going to read it out loud if I may. My college boyfriend, I allowed my feelings for him to allow him to manipulate me into doing things I didn't want to do in that relationship. You know why people can manipulate you or your college friend? You know why? Because they know they can. People will only ever do to you what they think they can get away with, nothing more. They will do nothing more to you than that. And manipulation is a form, of course, of coercion, which is a narcissistic trait. So when you're dealing with a narcissist, the best thing to do to not get sucked into their games is to ignore them. I know it's hard to do because they live on that connection with you. They live and breathe and survive on the narcissistic fix like a drug they get from hurting you, from manipulating you, from coercing you. When you do things that you don't want to do, but you do them anyway, even at your own detriment, makes you a people pleaser. And a people pleaser is normally one of the most visible signs of abuse. Now, there's a difference. There are people out there who actually like pleasing people and they do a great job at it. But it means something to them to do that. And they get something out of it to do that. They have gratitude. It's lovely to them to be a giver of sorts. But when you're a people pleaser, normally the people you're trying to please could care less about you, but you don't know that because you're so busy trying to please them. Secondly, they'll manipulate you, and normally there's some narcissistic tendencies or narcissism involved. They don't know better than what they already know, and you're just giving them a match for the cannon. So what they do is they feed off of your pain, they feed off the manipulation, and it never stops until you recon or reconnoiter somewhere where you find the information to extricate yourself out of it. And of course, that norm therapy will help you with that. Our problem in society isn't just manipulation and doing things that other people try to make you do, and you end up doing them anyway. That's not our big problem. Our big problem is, how did you get there in the first place? What happened in your life to make you so susceptible to these people? Someone put it, do I have a sign on my forehead that says that I'm a victim, please hurt me, or I'm some type of a punching bag for you? What brought you there? Some people think that it's a mental health problem, and it probably is. But more than likely, it's not. More than likely, it's just you're a coward. That's what it is. Most people on the planet are cowards. That's it. And they have to be taught bravery. They have to be taught how to control their fear. Someone has to sit you down very early in life and tell you that you need to stand up for yourself. And it's okay every now and then if you get popped in the lip, because they're going to pop you in the lip anyway if you don't do anything. So why not get popped in the lip for doing something? This is how life works. Yes. Unhealthy love is very dangerous, Khadija. It really is. That's why you're right. I don't want to say controlled to the right people, but that's a very strong word, controlled. Love is something you can't control. You can't help who you love. I think in every religion on the planet, they say, I can make you do anything I want. I just can't make you love me. Love is its own beast all by itself. It should never really be contained or controlled, but it should be understood. And you hear Everyone says all the time, oh, I can't describe love. It's just this one of these enigmatic feelings and blah, blah, blah. And that's so untrue. We've been taught to believe that, so we're always confused about love and we make the mistakes that we make. The truth is, love is discernible if you separate it from your relationships. You separate it from your marriage. You separate it from your what your kids do, even though most often that relationship between mother and child mostly is unconditional and vice versa. However, you still have standards set normally as a parent of what you like for your child to achieve while you love them on top of that. But controlling love would be something you never try to do. Now, I like your better statement, balance. Balance is better. Balance is better, but remember this, never 50-50. Some days it'll be 41. The next day your number's 36. The next day you're at 72. That percentage will change. Depends upon the circumstance in which you find yourself and the people with whom you're dealing. It just depends. Some days you'll stay at 100. Maybe on that day both of you are at 100 because you're both in agreement with the same thing. It could be a myriad of things. But don't think love is something we need to be able to put somewhere and control it or balance it. It balances itself. By nature, it's without transaction. And without any type of transaction, it can't be swayed one way or the other. It just is what it is. So when you're in love with someone, you're in love with them because you're in love with them, not because they have a new car, not because they provided you a great house. You appreciate all of these things. But if you're trapped in a relationship right now, or you were trapped, or you're about to be trapped in a relationship, think of it this way. Test drive the car. Test drive it and see if the gas runs out every time you hit a bump, or if the steering wheel goes out of alignment. That's what you do with your relationship. You test it out. You see what works, what does not, how you get along, how do you react in public, how do you respond in public. Two big differences, reacting and responding. Some things will catch you off guard and some things will keep you on. But love is a very difficult thing to try to wrangle. If you just leave it alone and let it be itself, love, and you take everything else about that person, about their lives, about their information, you take all of that and you put it in a whole nother area and you discern that and you try to compromise on that and you try to negotiate that over there. That puts you in the driver's seat. It makes you say to yourself in your conscience, it makes you say, if I'm going to actually have the right kind of person with me from now on, am I making a good choice? Am I maintaining my boundaries? Am I liking this person first? Am I being respected or honored by this person? So I'll ask you another question here as we move along and get off of that. How do you guys select your partners? How do you select the person you think you're going to love? What criteria do you have in your brain housing group, in your mind and in your heart? Somebody tell me in chat. What was the first thing you looked for in your mate when you fell in love? Or what is the first thing you look for when you're trying to find a mate to fall in love? That's important. Can you put that in the chat for me, ladies? If you don't have an idea, I just had this list with one of my patients the other day, and we had a great conversation. And we talk about lists. We talk about, what do you want out of your relationship or life, or what do you want, or what do you need out of a relationship and life? And those are two very different things. We have about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to go ahead and touch on those, and I think it's important. Everyone in the world needs to have a certain level of effective communications. I say the number one asset to any need of anyone on this planet is communication. Some is verbal, some is nonverbal, some is physical, some is computerized. Communication is everything. If you have poor communication, you have a poor relationship. It is literally that simple. And yes, and I agree with you, Tierney, that it's very important that no matter what, you should be able, whatever the circumstance, you should be able to still love your mate or the person with whom you're involved or your children, even if you have differences of opinion or subject matter or truths or lies. You still should be able to love them. That's a very good point. But first on the list of communication. And then we made it community was the next thing on the list. And I'm trying to find the rest of my list here. But another thing after community was respect. Respect was very important. You need respect in a relationship to have a relationship. If you do not have respect in a relationship, you do not have a relationship. It is literally that simple. We also, there's another need we have. We need to be heard and listened to. People need this as a human trait. You have to have someone who listens to you. They say in cliche many times that men don't listen, but I beg to differ. I think men listen to everything. They just don't respond to everything like that other person wants them to, their mate. They just don't respond. So another thing we talked about was stability. When you're looking at having a relationship, you have to look for a person who's not just job-wise stable. That can't be your criteria for need. The criteria for need has to deal with the stability of mind and where they're going and how they see you and understand you. That kind of stability. Or maybe they're in between jobs. Maybe they will be buying a McDonald's or purchasing a cookie store. And that's that transitional period of their life. That doesn't make them less than human because they don't have that kind of job security, unless that's what you really think you want or need. You must be honored in that relationship. If you're looking for somebody who's worthy to be around, you must be honored. Honor is so everything. Honor is what you have when everyone is looking. Integrity is what you have when no one's looking. So they work together, honor and integrity. When no one's looking at you, you must be the same person every time. And you must believe in the same kinds of principles and then live those at the same time. That's integrity. That's when no one's looking at you. You're still the same. Trust is important. Learning from one another is just as important. Sometimes you will say to your mate, I've learned something new from you today. That is a good day. Try to learn something new every single day with your mate, from your mate, or teach him something or her something. That's very important. Commonality. This is a big one. What do we have in common? Now, people say opposites attract, and that is true. But to maintain yourself with the opposite sex or the same, in order to stay in opposite personalities, you have to create a way to where each other have commonality or create commonality between the two of you. We both like going to the movies. We both enjoy horse racing. We both like vacationing in the winter instead of the summer. Those types of things that bring you together because of commonality will probably help to keep you together. Here's one for the books: common sense. That doesn't mean you're stupid when someone says common sense. It doesn't mean that. Remember, you're falling in love. You're trying not to be held hostage. So common sense approach to everything in that beginning 6-month phase where you're lying to each other, you're putting on facades, and you're just showing your most impressive side of self. During that phase, use your common sense, but also use your EQ or emotional quotient or intelligence as well. That's very important. Use common sense and your EQ or your emotional quotient for your emotional intelligence. That's very important because they love And falling in love has a way of blinding you. So you have to go back to your own faculty and try to use commonsensical approaches to issues, commonsensical approaches away from issues. You have to do so many different things in a commonsensical way where people will find themselves questioning those things that you're asking them to do. And that is what you want. You don't want really to maintain status quo for that entire first 6 months of your relationship. You want to make sure that you're questioned and that they're questioned. So there's a certain thing created as a result. It's called clarity. So you'll be clear on who that person is. I had one person tell me many years ago that their mate was a bad person, and they knew it because he told her, "I'm a bad person, but I'm trying to make myself better." And I think we've all heard this in jokes and in real life. Uh, Women have this propensity to want to fix men, the wounded bird syndrome. And that is problematic when you're trying to fix someone, when you're trying to get to know them. You can see where the problem lies, but everyone does it. So be careful with that. You should not be repairing a man. You either support him or you don't, but not repairing him. That's not your job. That's his job. Or vice versa. There's a lot of broken women out there too. We'll talk about that in the future. But let's talk more about proximity of culture, race, and geographical location. That's important. Some people, who are African American are married to some people who are Chinese, and some people who are Chinese are married to people who are white, and some people who are white are married to people who are black. It just goes on and on like that. But there's a certain appreciation for culture, race, and geographical location, because you may be in love with them in Europe because they're European and you're there. And then when you get back to the States, you may not be. The proximity of where you are may dictate how you love. So when you get to know a person, you have to appreciate all these types of things in them first before you decide that it's going to be love. And when you do decide that you want to be, again, I'll say this, vulnerable to love, because love is a form of defeat. You lose when you love, and you lose in a spectacularly good way. You fall in love, you surrender to love, and you allow love to be itself, all by itself, without transaction. No transactional relationship will ever work unless both partners know that it's just transactional. It will never work to advance to love until they let go of the transaction and the compromise of love. That's why most people are held hostage in these relationships. That's why they can't see their way out, and they keep finding the same person over and over and over again. And they wonder why. Why do I keep finding the same person? And I just left the narcissist, and the first person I meet is another narcissist, and another one is another narcissist, and the ones I had before that was also a narcissist. Because no one's ever given you permission not to be with a narcissist. There's a technique called Dunning-Kruger. It's about self and understanding self and judgment of self and others. And basically it says that if you try to evaluate yourself, you're going to be wrong most of the time. Those people who think they're smarter, oftentimes not that smart. And those people who think they're not that bright, oftentimes are very smart. We're incapable of evaluating ourselves without some level of bias as humans. That's why critique and input is very valuable from others. So when you're in a relationship and you're trying to figure out if this is good for you or not, talk to someone else. Ask someone who actually cares about you. Walk them down your list that I just gave you of the things you like and need in your relationships. Some of these things I mentioned you are needs and some are wants. I will delineate them further and further live streams in the future. But at the same time, you should just start pondering that at the end of the day, if I'm going to fall in love with someone, I need to set up a base or criteria from now on, and I need to give myself permission within that criteria of what I'm looking for. And if your self-esteem in that relationship is not, or that beginning, of course, of that relationship, if it's not congruent with your desires in that relationship, you're going to fall short every time. So if your self-esteem is low about you, you got to first do something about that. If you're looking for a better person to be with you, because if you're looking for a person who can meet you down here, then you're always going to have that disparity between you two, and it will always cause a problem. So it's not that other person's responsibility to bring you up to their level. It's that person's responsibility to support you while you bring yourself up to that level. That is very important. Most people don't want to see themselves as low on a totem pole, but they'll sit back and whine and cry and feel bad all the time, eating that ice cream on the couch, saying, nobody loves me. I don't know what to do. I'm a mess. Look at me, my hair, my body, my things, my level of intelligence doesn't even rise to the challenge of living anymore. And the cemetery's full of those people, by the way, full of them. But what you got to understand is, I'm sorry here. What we better have to understand, I'm getting messages in from different segments. I apologize for the pauses. What we better understand is that it's not their job to make you happy. If you're going into a relationship looking for happiness, you will never find it. Not ever, not in a million years will you find it. It will be aloof for the rest of your life. It is not your mate's responsibility to make you happy. It never has been. You've been told these cliches and people just go along with them and they're disappointed all the time. It is not your mate's responsibility to make you happy. However, it is your mate's responsibility to keep you happy and help you maintain and support your happiness. That is their job. Their job is not to make you happy, because you come as a sourpuss, you'll leave as a sourpuss. And there's nothing anyone can do about it but you. So if you're unhappy in a relationship, it's not about him. It's about what you want out of a relationship and what makes you happy and how you're identifying with that and what you need to do to change that. Not him or her. Depends upon how you go in that relationship. Self-esteem, and I want to say this because it came up early in a couple of sessions and conversations, has to have a value to it. Give your self-esteem a value. People look at it as, well, my self-esteem is, it's low because I don't think I look good. I'm not attractive. I'm not intelligent. I can't participate. I don't have any money, and all of these things. I'm sick all the time. Something's always wrong in my life. They come up. This is what happens in life. There's a thing called introspection and self-reflecting and self-critique. But whining is not that. Things you can do something about, especially in areas of preparing yourself for life and for love, especially, and to be loved, more importantly. Things you can do something about, you do it. Things you can't, screw it. Let it go. You can do something about it, you do it. Things you can't, screw it. Let it go. People want to try to make something out of nothing. If you think that you're not attractive, do this test to yourself. Ask yourself this test. After you discount all the mates in the world that are too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny, too ugly, too pretty, too kind, too unkind, too nervous, too funny, too unhappy, after you eliminate all those people in the world, from anyone's perspective, you still probably got about 500 million to 1 billion people to choose from. You're not alone. You're not the only one sitting there feeling sorry for yourself. But the idea of getting something done as a result of feeling sorry for yourself is the purpose of you getting off that couch. It's the purpose of you stop caring what other people think about you. And if you remember this, we're going to talk about it more and more throughout as we grow our following. But people will only ever do to you what you let them do to you. And You have to understand your self-esteem has to have a percentage value to it. If you're at 30% right now, what do you need to do to get to 40? First, do something active and not necessarily positive, but gratifying. Do something gratifying for yourself or do it for someone else. It is scientifically proven that if you do something for someone else, that person will get more out of it than you do, and you'll get more out of it than they do. It becomes a win-win on both sides because when you see someone else advance in life and do well, and you're sincere about their advancement and how they feel, you're going to feel much better as a result of having been involved in the first place. I always tell people that because in life, most people, especially the ones who are getting to know you or who don't know you, they all want you to do well. They just don't want you to do better than them. So you have to watch out for those too. And if you get into a relationship where you're both too talkative, you're probably not going to do well until you learn to respect each other's conversation. Love is not hard, but it's not easy either. I've been in love a few times in my life, or at least I thought I was until I finally understood the concept that I'm trying to share with you now. Keep your relationship and everything about your relationship out of your love. Your love should be all by itself and for its own reasons. And you should be able to captivate any human being on the planet just by loving yourself first. Why should someone else love you if you don't love you? What makes you lovable? If you can't love yourself, why should someone else love you? And that's why when you get into these relationships and they become abusive because one, they know you're a coward and you're not going to do anything. Two, they know they can get away with it. Three, they know you are dependent on that love. Those are the big three reasons. They know they can get away with it. And people will only ever take advantage of you because you let them. So we'll teach you more about that assertiveness at Norm Therapy, but we'll also help you understand that in this particular talk, maybe we'll change the time so we'll get a larger audience. And I don't mean better than you, I just mean a larger audience. And we're working on all the kinks. So keep and subscribe to what we're doing. Stay tuned for all of our different broadcasts here in the future. I hope this conversation helped. I want you to understand that we don't make money from this. This is LinkedIn and a couple of other platforms. What we're doing is trying to build a following for helping people around the world. Right now, we have Norm therapists everywhere that we've trained, and we did it up to this point free of charge. Now we're going into a pay period here in the future, and that's going to be different, and we're going to embrace that too. We have to start somewhere. But I'm looking forward to your feedback. I'm looking forward to your continual participation in the future, and I really want you to get something out of these talks. Soon, we will be doing a live session with a victim where you'll see me actually interview them. I'm a much different person when I'm talking to somebody, not like bad or good, but I'm very focused on what I'm doing in our Norm Therapy sessions. And we conduct them every day, all the time. And it's overwhelming the accolade and the support, as well as the honorable mentions we get for what we do. We have many testimonials. I would say thousands of testimonials. Of varying degrees of what we do and how effective we are. Again, I'm Michael Gibson. I'm the creator of Norm Therapy. We have Kelly Dean, who's the head of our 501c3. We have Kim Carpenter, who's the manager of Norm Therapy, and our personnel director is Nicole Leonard. Plus, they're all Norm therapists as well, trained. And we really do a good job, I think. And I think that I'm not doing it justice tonight just by rambling on. So I want to give you guys a good farewell, and hopefully you got something out of this talk. Now, I can talk for a while, but I'm going to wait to our format when we have more graphics and all of that. So stay tuned, come back, bring someone with you, help us get our following up, click like, share, and all of that stuff you normally do. And you would very appreciate it. Are any other questions before I go? Okay, good. Good meeting you all. Thank you for showing up. I will talk soon.